Hi, welcome to Cooking Fast and Eating Light, where it's my mission to break down that barrier to healthy eating. Welcome, my name is Judy Matusky. I am a registered and licensed dietitian as well as a culinary nutritionist with Athens Nutrition. So it's good to see you today. Welcome to all of you that are joining live right now, as well as to any of you that are going to be watching this on the replay. All right, well today it's about one-pot meals and pantry meals. I think those are some of the most easy and efficient ways to get dinner on the table. All right, so we're gonna walk through the recipe, we're gonna walk through the ingredients, and we'll get you in and out of here pretty quickly. All right, so it's a one-pot meal with using whole wheat pasta as well as canned chickpeas. So I'm going to I got a few things started ahead of time. I'm gonna pull my pot over on this burner because I wanted to get the onions already sauteed up for you so that we can kind of move on to the next step. So let's just talk a little bit about the recipe. I found this recipe just leafing through Bon Appetit magazine online, and I thought it was great because it was really very few ingredients and it came together in one pot. And it was using mostly pantry ingredients, so it was sort of one of those pandemic recipes. But when I made it, I didn't love it. It was a little bit, the sauce was a little too thin, and I felt like it didn't quite have the intensity of flavors that I wanted. So I did take some liberties to make some changes to the recipe, and in doing so, I did add a few more. So I know we go 5-ish ingredients. This is gonna be a little bit more, but again, most of these ingredients you're gonna have in your pantry or in your fridge. There may be a few that you don't, and we could even leave them out if you don't have them. But I just wanted the flavor to be there, and I don't, sometimes I don't want to compromise flavor for just trying to stick to like 5 ingredients. So we'll walk you through why I chose what I chose. Okay, so what I did was I already chopped up an onion, a pretty decent sized regular white onion, and I have it going. I sauteed it up in this pot. So I wanted to get that step just done ahead of time. And now we're going to just start to assemble everything into this one pot. All right, so we've got the onions. I chopped up 3 cloves of garlic. So I'm going to add them now because I don't particularly like adding, we just lost a little bit, the garlic at the same time you're sauteing the onions, because garlic really can tend to burn. And we don't want the garlic in there that long. So the onions were sauteed ahead of time. They took it, I don't know, all of maybe 3 or 4 minutes to get them softened up. You don't necessarily need to have them browned, or we're just trying to soften them. So I'm adding the garlic. All right, so we're gonna just let that saute for a little bit as we add some other ingredients. And I wanna talk about these ingredients specifically because these are what are sort of like considered sort of flavor bombs when you're putting meals together and you are using fewer ingredients. I think we talked about this before. You really want to take advantage of the ingredients that you are using. So I'm going to be adding a double concentrated tomato paste, which you find in tubes, and you can get this in any supermarket. You can use tomato paste out of the can. That's fine too. I just love it in a tube because this way it's less food waste. I feel like every time I open up a tomato paste can, you take a couple tablespoons out and then it goes in your refrigerator and then you end up forgetting about it, and before you know it, there's like mold on the top and you end up having to throw it away. So rather than wasting it, I like to buy it in the tube and I can take out as much as I need. I keep this in the refrigerator, just in my produce drawer. So we're gonna add about a tablespoon of this tomato paste. It can be a little bit more, that's fine. This has such a nice umami, that rich flavor. And we're going to let it saute a little bit in this pan because we want it to get even a little bit richer and browner than it already is. So we want to bring some more flavor out of that tomato paste. And then the other thing we're going to add, and we've used this before, but we're going to use some anchovies out of the tin. Now you can use anchovy paste, and I have used anchovy paste in the past when I make this dish, but I just don't think the anchovy paste really gives it enough flavor. I think using the fillets out of the tin is really what we're looking for. And again, this is not gonna add a fishy flavor, so no worries about that. This is just in the background, helping to make this sauce just a little bit deeper in flavor because we're not using very many ingredients. So I'm gonna use I think the recipe says 2 fillets, but I really like a richer flavor. So I'm gonna probably use at least 4, maybe even 5. So we're gonna saute that up, and then so the anchovies and the tomato paste really are what's gonna help intensify the flavor of this dish. And now we're gonna add some fennel seeds. Now this you can leave out. If you don't have fennel seeds, that's fine. You don't have to add them. You could add instead maybe some dried oregano, maybe a teaspoon of dried oregano, just for extra flavor. But I'm gonna add the fennel seeds because I just love that sort of anise flavor that lends itself to tomato sauce. I just think it tastes so good. So I'm gonna add it at the same time, just because you're kind of like blooming those fennel seeds a little bit. We sort of want that flavor to come up before we add the liquid. So, you know, again, maybe a minute of your, you know, 2 at the max. So you don't really want to burn anything. We're just trying to intensify the flavors a little bit. And remember, with the anchovy fillets, you don't have to worry about them. They break down completely. They're going to just break down into the sauce. You're not going to see, you know, whole anchovy fillets at the bottom or within your sauce. They're going to break down. Now we're going to add a can of chickpeas, and this was I just drained them. I rinsed them a little bit. So 1 whole can is going to go in. We'll saute that around. And one thing that you are going to want to do to help give the sauce a little bit of just a little texture and a little bit thicker, you're going to want to mash maybe half of those chickpeas. So leave half of them whole, and maybe half of them, we're just going to break them up a little bit. You can use the back of your fork to do this. I just have like a little potato masher. And so you just, you know, just kind of go through them. Just give them a little bit of a smash, but you don't want them completely because you do want the texture of some of the whole ones. So we're going to break up maybe half of them. All right, so that's really just a couple minutes of that. And let me just show you, because I know this pot's a little bit off camera. So we've got them mashed up just a little bit, if you can see that. And now we're finishing this off. So we're gonna add a rosemary, a sprig of rosemary. This is a nice long one, and I love rosemary, so I want a big long stem of rosemary in there. So we're gonna add that. Now we're gonna add 2 cups of water. Already the sound goes down the minute you add that water. And then we have a 28-ounce can of like plum Italian tomatoes, whatever brand that you have in your pantry is fine. So what I did when I opened up the can, I did just take my knife a little bit and I kind of just ran it through just to break up those tomatoes, because they're whole tomatoes and I wanted them to break up a little bit. So that goes in. And I am going to add just a little bit of salt. So we're just going to season it a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of pepper, little fresh ground pepper. Again, it's like, I don't make anything without a lot of pepper. So add that in. All right, so that's it. Make sure, because sometimes I always forget things. But no, I think that's pretty much it. So we need to just bring this up to a boil, which shouldn't take very long. So I'm just going to cover it. Let me just give it a quick stir. So before you add the pasta, you just kind of want this to come up to a little bit of a boil. So I'm going to cover it so that's going to happen a little bit quicker. And while that's coming up to a boil, we're going to talk about a couple of quick things. All right, so when it comes to the pasta, I think we've talked about this before. There's a lot of brands out there. I just really do prefer whole wheat pasta. I just feel like the texture is great. I feel like it's very satisfying, very filling because of the fiber that's in the pasta. I have a couple different brands. I use Trader Joe's brands a lot because I think it has a nice kind of nutty flavor. I think I mentioned the Delalo brand that's in most supermarkets. That's a really good one. You do want to, when you stray, well, even with regular pasta, there's some obviously that are better than others as far as texture goes, and that's what I really look for. So sometimes these whole wheat pastas just can break apart and they get kind of mushy, and then if you have a brand like that and they're thinking, oh my gosh, I really don't like whole wheat pasta, please try some other brands because they definitely do. It does vary. So I'm using spaghetti, like a thin spaghetti, because the thing with this dish is that you do want to use a pasta that cooks pretty quickly. So under 10 minutes, I would say. I made this pasta last week and I used a different shape of pasta. Anything goes. There's no, you can pick the one, but you just don't want a pasta that's going to take like 12 minutes to cook. And the other thing when we add the pasta is we want to make sure with this dish particularly is that you really want that pasta al dente, even before it's al dente. So if it takes 10 minutes to cook, I would pull it off at like 7, because as it sits in the sauce, it's going to continue to kind of absorb that liquid and it will get softer. So if you don't, you don't particularly want to end up with a, like a mushy pasta for this. You want some texture. So I would definitely undercook your pasta and pull it off the heat. So that's if you need gluten-free. Obviously, you can use a chickpea-based pasta, a lentil-based pasta would work perfectly well. Just again, cook it as long as it says to be cooked, that it needs to be cooked on the box. Or if you're using a brown rice pasta or any other lentil-based pastas are good substitute. That will boost the protein content of this meal a little bit more than just the whole wheat pasta. But remember that this is a great vegetarian and really vegan. We'll talk about how that we can make it vegan if you need it to be. It's a great meal. We don't need any extra animal protein here. There's plenty coming in through the whole wheat pasta and through the beans and we're gonna add a little bit of cheese. So don't be too concerned about that. All right, so we're gonna get that up to a boil. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get this other burner on because I wanna just start kind of thinking about how you might wanna serve this. So I am going to saute up this entire bag of spinach, because what you might wanna think about doing, right, is figuring out ways that you can really increase the amount of vegetables that you have on your plate. So something like this, you cook it up in one pot, but a nice leafy green is a really great complement to this meal nutritionally. And if you just want to get a bag of spinach and just saute it down, and I have some olive oil in this pan, so I'm just going to add the spinach. I might not add all of it. I would normally add all of it, but I want this to cook down, hopefully, in the time that we have here. So I'm going to get that all the way up, and we'll let that saute down. And what I like to do when I cook my spinach is I'll put a little olive oil in it, maybe a little bit of garlic. I didn't do that this time, but just a little olive oil, and then I will splash it with a little bit of red wine. I think it works well with Swiss chard. Red wine and Swiss chard works really well together. And I am going to just give it a little cover, so we'll let that cook down. All right, so our pasta is starting to bubble. It could probably be a little bit hotter, but just for time's sake, I'm going to throw this in. And then I'm just going to break this up. So I'll take the pasta, and you can't, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to use the whole pound of pasta. I was trying to figure out how to write this recipe so that you could, and it just doesn't work. So it only calls for 12 ounces of the pasta. So you're going to use about 3/4 of the box that you have. And since I have this spaghetti, this is going to cook pretty quickly. I'm breaking this up, and I'm just going to break it into smaller pieces, and that way it'll just be a little bit easier to eat. I don't think this would work really well if you wanted to use like the whole long strand of pasta. So let me just break this up, and I'll stir it around. All right, that's probably about 3/4 of it. Again, what's so fantastic about this is it's one pot. So not only is it fast and easy, not a lot of ingredients, most of which are coming from your pantry, but it's got a nice nutritional profile, and it really comes together in under 20 minutes. So this is one of those perfect meals to make when you're coming home and you don't have a lot of time and you just really want to have dinner on the table pretty quickly. All right, so let's chop up, because we are going to add, I'm going to add some fresh herbs. I posted earlier this morning that I was able to I'm still getting great herbs from our garden, and it's so nice to be able to still pick them. So our parsley is doing really well. So, and I love parsley because boy, when you pick parsley, it just grows back again. So we have some really nice fresh parsley still coming out of the garden, and I am still getting my basil. So there are a couple of plants. Now, once it starts getting cold, that's tough on basil if you get these colder nights, but I still have some basil that seems to be doing okay. So I'm gonna take the parsley and a little bit of this basil, and I'm just gonna chop it up because I'm gonna add it as this pasta comes together. We're gonna just throw in, and I think the recipe calls for maybe like 1/4 cup of chopped fresh herbs. And again, this is optional. Some of these ingredients are optional. If you just don't have fresh herbs, don't use them, or just use dried herbs. Use what you have. And remember, when it comes to herbs, unless the stems are really tough, use the stems. So I think a lot of us, we sort of take off the leaves, and we're afraid to keep going as we're chopping, and we don't use the stems. Use them, just chop them up. They're usually pretty tender, and they have even a little more of a intense flavor than the leaves do. So just, don't waste them. All right, so I just chopped up a little bit of the basil and the parsley, and we're gonna add it just before we're ready to take the pasta off. And then I'm also gonna use a little bit to sprinkle on top. All right, and I actually have some fresh oregano that I pulled out of the garden this morning as well, so I could add that. I'm not going to, but you certainly could, fresh or dry, particularly if you're not going to use the fennel. All right, so let me just give this a quick stir. It's coming together. This might not cook all the way through before we're closing up the video, but that's okay, because it's just this pot that I have that's on this burner. It does struggle a little bit on this burner to really get up to the full temperature that we need, but I can still show you. We'll take a peek at it. And then we have our spinach. And the nice thing about spinach is that it cooks down so quickly. So you really could do this in the microwave if you wanted to just steam it up really quick. Or if you just want to do it in a pan, that's fine too. But we just want to cook it down. And let me just point this out, because I was looking at this bag, the nutrient panel on the bag of spinach last night, because I had cooked another bag off last night. And if we talk about nutrient density, it doesn't get much more nutrient dense than spinach, or any dark leafy green for that matter, right? So if you look at the label, it says that a serving size is 3 ounces. Well, the bag is 10 ounces, so it's about 3 servings. But with spinach, you have this whole bag of spinach, and it cooks down to like 1 tablespoon. So it would not be inconceivable for someone to eat this whole bag of spinach, because again, once it cooks down, the volume really shrinks, and it's easy to eat a lot of it, and there is no reason why you couldn't eat a lot of it, right? So if you look at calorie density or nutrient density is just the amount of nutrients are sort of packed in to the number of calories that a food item would have. So if you ate this whole bag, it would only be 60 calories. So this entire bag is only about 60 calories. And then if you compare those 60 calories to the amount of nutrition that comes with those calories, and these are just the ones that are listed on here, but you would get about almost a half your day's supply of potassium, which is one of those really important nutrients that many of us don't get enough of, because most of us don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. You're gonna get probably, again, like 30% of your fiber by eating this. And you're gonna pick up almost 10 grams of protein. I think sometimes we forget that there's protein in vegetables. So we don't necessarily always think of that, but it's there, especially if we're eating enough of it. But what's really crazy, on this label, they only list 4 vitamins and minerals. There are, again, probably 40 different vitamins and minerals in this spinach that aren't listed on here. But when it comes to vitamin A, in this plant version of vitamin A, you're getting 330% of what you need in a day if you were to eat this whole bag. If you only eat the serving size, you're still getting over 100% of your vitamin A. You're getting almost 20% calcium. So we get some calcium from spinach. Unfortunately, we don't absorb it really well, but we'll probably be able to absorb at least a little bit. And you're gonna get, again, 100% of your vitamin C. That's if you ate the whole bag cooked down, which is not inconceivable. But even so, the nutrient value is incredibly high, even if you eat the small little serving that they're saying is a serving. So nutrient density, it's all about vegetables, really. You know, you can't get something much more nutrient dense than vegetables, and particularly dark leafy greens. All right, I wanted to point that out real quick because I just thought that, you know, again, a lot of us don't necessarily look at the food labels. I know I don't even do it very often, but I just happened to be taking a glance at that and I thought, wow, that's incredible. If you ate this whole bag of 60 calories, right, but you get an amazing nutritional value out of it. That's fantastic. All right, so here's our spinach. That was filled up. Now we have just this tiny amount. So that's why I'm saying if you cook the whole bag, which I probably did about half the bag, that's not that much. All right, so let's just take this off. Let me grab some tongs. Let me turn my heat off here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the spinach at the bottom of this bowl because any way you can increase the vegetables on your plate. We always talk about half plate vegetables, 3/4 of a plate vegetables, the more the better. I'm gonna just season the spinach a teeny bit with a little shake of salt and then a little black pepper. And if you want to, and I kind of do want to, I have some red pepper here, red pepper flakes. I'm just gonna put a few of those on top of my spinach. All right, and then I'm gonna move this pot off. All right, and then we're gonna top this with our pasta. And this needs to go a little bit longer, but I just want to show you. It will thicken up, so the sauce gets like a pretty thick sauce. It's not a real loose sauce once it's all completely cooked down. This needs to go just probably a few more minutes, but let me just show you. I'll pull this off. And you can kind of leave the rosemary sprig in there. The rosemary leaves are they're gonna fall off into the sauce, and that's great. And you can take that little sprig out then at the end. But I would take the sauce and I would cover your spinach with the sauce, okay? And then we're gonna take, oh, I'm sorry, you know what I forgot? I forgot at this point, as you're finishing up, you're gonna definitely wanna add some cheese. If you wanna keep it vegan, you can just, it's about 1/3 of a cup of cheese. I'm just gonna add it to the top of this since I didn't mix it in. But about 1/3 of a cup of cheese you're gonna add into the pot of the pasta as it's coming off the heat. And then I'm gonna take those herbs that I chopped up, it's about 1/3 of a cup, I'm gonna add them in and stir that around. If you wanna keep this vegan, so you don't want any animal-based products or food in here, then your alternative would be to use nutritional yeast as your Parmesan cheese substitute. So instead of the parm, you're gonna add nutritional yeast because that's sort of a vegetarian, vegan option for Parmesan. All right, so we added our herbs, we added a little bit of cheese here at the end, and then for this finished dish, I'm just gonna sprinkle this with a few herbs that we already have chopped up. And here we got it. So there is your one pot pantry chickpea pasta. A few extra ingredients than the 5, but I think you'll forgive me because most of those ingredients you probably already have, and I just felt like they were really essential for this dish to really make this broth and the sauce a lot more flavorful. All right, well, you enjoy this during the week. I hope you make it. If you do, put a little comment in on Athens Nutrition's Facebook page so that we know that you made it. Let us know, or take a picture. We would love that. We'll be back. I'll be back next week. We are in pumpkin season, so we're going to do something with pumpkin next week. Have a healthy weekend, and I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.